We're traveling back to the mystical lands of far Cathay, where warpstone deserts and dragon danger abound. Clan Eshin forged its reputation as fearsome killers here, learning martial arts, subterfuge, stealth, and assassination. From that point on, they plagued the empires of men. Skaven have something especially nasty cooked up for Zhao Ming and the armies of Cathay in this one. We're back on SFO Grimhammer, on the Iron Dragon's home turf, and he has some experience dealing with ratmen. A couple thousand years of it, in fact. They do share one common purpose. They love huffing and puffing warpstone. And sure, maybe it's addled his brain a bit, but Zhao Ming is a ruthless warrior, a brilliant tactician, and the head that Deathmaster Snikch and his Black 13 will need to remove if they wish to claim this battlefield. The HQ for Clan Eshin will be made up of 15 elite ninja rats, Snikch himself, an assassin, and the Skaven Black 13, the shady group of killers responsible for Talea's Night of 1,000 Terrors. In SFO, their Weeping Blades cut enemy armor values in half, and they have numerous bomb types that can debuff enemies or keep them invisible until that perfect moment to strike. They strike hard, they strike real fast, they don't have majority AP, but they don't really need it when they've got all that armor sundering. Cutting 100 armor into 50, it basically means that everything else around you is dealing more damage too. As you probably figured out by now, this is entirely an Eshin-themed build, which means triads, assassins, death runners, and this new overwhelm mechanic, which severely reduces enemy reload skill and weapon damage. Triads are not amazing frontline combatants, they're a bit too squishy for that, but their combat prowess seems to disarm enemies and make it easier for other Skaven units, like Doomflayers, to do their dirty work. The Dwarf Thing Menace, with its own armor sundering, isn't just good versus Dawi. Cathay plays a lot like a Dwarfs, and when this thing activates its overcharge, it can trade its own armor for additional speed and killing power. There are 3 sets of Plague Claw catapults, which we'll find out soon enough are a bit at odds with the rest of the strategy, and a whole nother ambushed wing, gearing up for a 3-pronged attack and pincer maneuver through the valley floor. On the other side soars the majestic Sky Junk, granting additional accuracy and missile resist for all friendlies in a 100-meter radius, and tons of firepower in the form of its attached fire rain rocket and dropped explosive ordnance. Down on the valley floor below it, 2 crane guns, host of Jade Warriors and Jade Lancers, and an army that is also set up to receive a 3-pronged assault, with the Zhao Ming and the Green Guardian in the vanguard. Peasants will be rounding out the rest of the army, but really the important thing here are the single entities, and the Iron Dragon has his Breath Attack, which is brutal versus low armor troops, and Constellation of the Dragon, for when you absolutely positively need to overkill and incinerate every single Ratman in a 30-meter radius. In the front, hulking out like Bruce Banner, is the Jolly Green Giant with its redirecting aura, which will deflect missile attacks back at its attackers. Extremely difficult unit to bring down, awesome single entity monster to hold down the fort, and on the flank, the elite shock troops of the Celestial Court, the Righteous Lances of Wei Jin. Their armor is strong enough as to reflect blows back towards enemies as well. So, at the start of this match, Clan Eshin has a bit of a conundrum here. They can sit and trade with the Cathayan artillery, but the Longbow Rider is starting to expose the game plan and perhaps more importantly, give vision for the Sky Junk to shoot into all those expensive Death Runners. Ideally, there would be no dangerous flyers that could scout out and relay info back to Cathay's range troops, so Eshin could be passive, wait for Cathay to march into the valley under a withering salvo of Plague Claw catapults, then attack with their ambush wings. But instead, they're going to decide to forgo the Plague Claw catapults, which are actually only 700 gold in SFO, essentially abandon them because they can't protect them without leaving tons of units back, and just full send, full YOLO, go right in. Map-wide, they will activate their concealment bombs and begin their invisible approach, which of course means the catapults are already dead. They just don't know it yet. The Righteous Lances of Wei Jin have Cavalry Bane in SFO, trait that many spears and halberds share, makes them very good for slowing and hurting large enemy targets, but they also have great melee stats in general, so here, with their 110 speed, they'll be using that to their deadly effect and essentially go from Skaven crew to Skaven crew, eliminating each of those Plague Claw catapults. Zhao Ming shifting into dragon form, ready to drop some dragon breasts into the middle of the onrushing Vermintide, and the Jolly Green Giant moving down into the valley floor in the center. Skaven are not going to put a lot of emphasis there, only a few random holding troops, couple slaves, and clan rats. Most of it is on the flanks, which means it's the Death Runner's time to shine. It will be an uphill battle for them, but they are great for slicing through armored units like Jade Warriors, and the hope for Eshin is that a quick, overwhelming strike on both ends of the valley will leave the center exposed and surrounded on both sides. If Zhao Ming dives into support, triads with Overwhelm, AP, and bonus versus large will ward him off, and Cathay will quickly find themselves on the back foot, despite getting free kills on the Plague Claws in the rear. But Shenlong Gundam, the Green Guardian, tossing Skaven slaves like rag dolls, holding down the center all by itself, while Eshin looks to overload the northern and southern choke points. Ambush has been pretty much textbook thus far. Crane guns had zero chance to fire, zero chance to equalize the numbers a bit. Halberds and sword and board infantry are tied up in hopeless melee engagements. The Vermintide is upon us. Skaven do have to be very careful not to blob too much, though. Dragon's Breath and Constellation of the Dragon from Zhao Ming could both punish that very heavily, as could the Sky Junk with its Fire Rain Rocket. And over on this side, this is really where the bulk of Eshin's forces are, and they're going to sweep aside the pittance that Cathay has put over on the right flank. Terracotta Sentinel in the center doing Terracotta Sentinel things. Clan Rats honestly should just bypass it. The one downside that monster has, it is almost zero mobility, so pretty much just ignore it, send the rest of the rats up the hill and into the teeth of this Cathayan defense. Now, the Black 13, the Assassin, and Deathmaster Snikch are diving into the back line, and this is really important for them. If they can quickly neutralize the crane guns and the halberds, then push into the center, they can link up with the other force on this side and essentially sandwich the entire Cathayan army. Cathay is being smart about it, though. They realize just how numerous the Skaven are on their right. They're going to sack the units on that side. It's a hopeless situation for them there. They're going to retreat back towards their center, set up a hasty and makeshift defense around the Green Guardian and Zhao Ming. Remember that they have tons of tools for bursting through hundreds of Ratmen at once with the Sky Junk, with its bombs, with the Zhao Ming spells, and with Hammer and Anvils from the Longbow Riders, who up to this point are probably MVP, and have already eliminated about 2,100 gold worth of artillery crews. But Clan Eshin's doing what they need to do as well. Black 13, led by their Deathmaster, already straight up assassinated the Crane Gunners. They're about to lead a new charge towards Cathay's center in front of a huge host of troops, and the attack on Cathay's left still has most of its impetus. 3 healthy units of Death Runners, mulching any and all infantry that gets in their way, and to illustrate the point, this is what I'm talking about. Red arrows marking the approach from both flanks, meet in the middle on that blue circle, classic pincer maneuver, and that's big time trouble for everything but Cathay's mobile elements and the single entities, which of course are exactly what you want if you want to survive this kind of attack. Fire Rain Rocket is a problem for the Skaven, though. Great way to stymie the Vermintide and punish any and all blobbing, and some of that blobbing will be inevitable. Jade Lancers have 50 charge bonus, very powerful downhill charge. They'll be amplified with that downhill momentum. And of course, Zhao Ming is the X factor here. That mastery of elemental winds makes his Dragon Breasts really powerful, and it's especially nasty on Death Runners, who are just straight up deleted from the game. Yeah, when you don't have armor, that is what that spell does to you, and that is why you will often see people pair that with Plague of Rust from the lore of Metal. Dragon's Breath is nasty against low armored troops. So what was looking really good over the left flank of Cathay only a few seconds ago has now just been completely eliminated. There are some triads and routing troops that are going to start coming back, cycling in, but now Zhao Ming will focus his attention on Deathmaster's side, on the right flank as they push in towards the center, and that was a big-time Constellation of the Dragon. Now, they managed to get mostly out of that Vermintide block and into a position where they wouldn't lose their entire army when that thing landed, so they did Delta Split. They did manage to avoid the worst of it, but still lost most of the HP on a unit of Death Runners, and now the Black 13 have a lot of heavy lifting to do alongside Deathmaster Snikch and the Assassin. Clan Eshin have to find one of these single entities, maybe that Jolly Green Giant, and eliminate it from the game. They need to start breaking down some of these important troops, because while the Jade Warriors and the Peasant Crossbowmen and the Peasants in general are something they have to deal with, the single entities are really what's keeping Cathay in this game right now. The Sky Junk, the Righteous Lances of Wei Jin, which of course are the Flying Shot Cavalry, which have been a complete terror for the Skaven thus far, and Zhao Ming himself, the Iron Dragon. Vermintide's looking a little bit thin right now. Dwarf Thing Menace starting to put the team on its back though, and it's going to overcharge. It's going to activate its Warp Overcharge. It'll get additional speed and more weapon damage and start buzzsawing its way through the Peasants and through the Jade Warriors, while the Black 13 and Deathmaster Snikch deal with more of the ranged troops near the apex of that hill. Also remember, the Dwarf Thing Menace has Warp Lightning cooldown. So every time it engages in melee, it will randomly call down Warp Lightning, which is a really good way for it to eliminate more infantry in quick succession. And a big-time Blade Storm coming out from the Deathmaster. That is one way to quickly get the numbers back on your side. And a lot of the Vermintide that did rout off, they have low leadership as we know. They will start cycling back into combat and will look to rally around their lord. Nothing so far has been done about the Black 13, and really useful thing about having a unit like that, you get a full surround off on something like that Green Guardian, which is known for having an obscene amount of armor. Well, automatically that armor value is cut in half, and you've got 13 essentially single entities. I mean, they're almost heroes in and of themselves with 250 weapon damage chunking in. So alongside the Deathmaster, they might be able to take this thing down very quickly. But I think the big question that Skaven have to answer right now is how to deal with the Righteous Lances of Wei Jin, because they don't have a lot of tools for pinning it down with mass. Normally you'd want to have Rat Ogres or something like that, but they would have been a bit exposed in this game, not really a part of the Eshin theme either. But their absence is acutely felt for the Skaven, because typically that's how you want to deal with Longbow Riders. They engage, they backcharge something, then you bring the Rat Ogres in and backcharge them, pin them in place, then you've got your Vermintide to start shaking them with their crappy, cruddy little spears. That's to say nothing of the Sky Junk, which is just sitting there above everything, conferring nice bonuses and exploding hordes of Ratmen with every single volley from that Fire Rain rocket. So things are starting to look a little bit dire for the Skaven right now. They've lost a lot of their troops, a lot of it due to those Dragon Breaths, the Sky Junk, to the support from Zhao Ming. Smoke bombs will slow down a huge section of the Cathayan army. They are surrounded, but I'm not sure that the Cathayans can do a whole lot to them in melee here. Feels like they're going to be able to win this specific fight, but there's so many more Cathayan troops that are coming back from the flanks, and the single entities have not been damaged much at all. Green Guardian is still completely healthy. Zhao Ming is completely healthy. Righteous Lances of Wei Jin can pretty much backcharge with impunity, unless Ishika's Triads could get a nice clone summon directly behind them after they engage, but I don't see them anywhere right now. They might be getting blown up by this Fire Rain rocket. And while the Vermintide will look to make a little bit more headway at the valley floor in the center of the map, moving through the riverbed, they might be able to chunk their way through the Jade Warriors. It looks like the stalwart defenders of the Far East are going to hold the line. Ishika's Triads are right here. No summon is forthcoming, and this is looking well in hand for Cathay. Dwarf Thing Menace will try to equalize things a bit more, getting some uphill charges into the Peasant Archers. But yeah, those Righteous Lances of Wei Jin they're doing cool dance moves right now, and they were probably the MVP for Cathay, closely behind Zhao Ming and this Terracotta Sentinel, which was just a stalwart defender. Could not be touched, could not be moved, could not be rocked. And while the single entities in the Black 13 try to surround him, we'll get some good damage in now, and it's going to be way too little, way too late, and it is army losses for Clan Eshin. Now, I will say, I have tried full Clan Eshin attacks many times in the past. Normally, it's just not that good. They're not designed to be the bulk of your force, right? They're just too squishy. They are backline chargers. Having a handful of them is real nice in certain situations. Against Cathay, against the dwarfs, having those Weeping Blades, very useful. But a full army of them, typically not the best. They just don't have the staying power or numbers required. With that said, there was a clear issue with my strategy in the scenario, and that was the Plague Claw catapults. Obviously, didn't know what the Cathayan army would look like here, but having some additional Rat Ogre support and forgoing that artillery would have been much more useful and much more synergistic with the tactics I ended up employing with that full-on rush. The attack started out amazing, then kind of fizzled out pretty quick due to some good picks and positioning from Cathay. As for the Black 13 themselves, I don't actually think they're very good. They're a fun flavor unit for campaign, definitely have some synergy with Deathmaster Snikch, but overall, just not a great troop choice, probably a little bit expensive as well. And the elite of Cathay, the Sky Junk, the Longbow Riders, and the Terracotta Sentinel, backed up by Zhao Ming's magics, proved to be too much in this one. Well played, hope you guys enjoyed it.